Hi everyone, it's Vicky from createafashionbrand.com and fashionservices.com. We're on our 5 minute fashion brand playlist again, our weekly little question and answer session. And I've got a couple of questions actually from somebody called Tom in the US. I don't know what website or brand you're from because you haven't said. But your first question, which is a little bit cheeky, asks how old I am. Well, it's not the politest thing to ask a lady her age. Um, but let's just say I'm not particularly young. A lot of people said I look kind of something around my 20s. No, there's a good few years on top of that. I remember the 80s very, very well. So I'll give you that hint, but that's as far as I'm gonna go. Okay, his actual question is why should I do my branding near the end of launching my fashion brand? So just for as a kind of quick intro for those of you who are not on my email list, I have a 66 page create a fashion brand kind of mini startup guide. And in that I talk about, and on blog posts and other things, I talk about doing your what I call graphical branding towards the end. So at the beginning of your process, you should be thinking about the brand itself. So the morals, anything that you think is really important to your brand, any uh, feelings that you have about certain things, any issues like environment and morals and all sorts of things like that. Anything that you think is really important, because that will guide you through kind of creating your brand and all the decisions you have to make as you go through the process. What I do advise, however, is that your graphical branding, so things like logos, fonts, colors, that kind of thing, you should be thinking about that as you go through your process, but really you should be doing that at the end. And it's for one very simple reason. Right at the beginning, when you're thinking about your brand, quite often people get a little carried away and they have all these kind of amazing ideas and they think it's going to be a certain way and these great passion for what they're doing. I hope you never lose that and I hope it is such an easy process for you. But there are a couple of places when you go through the whole process of launching your first collection or product that might actually end up changing your products to the point where they no longer suit your brand or your market. So, for example, manufacturing is quite a common one. Quite often, when people are doing things like luxury brands, you have to create a luxury product to go for that luxury brand and that luxury market. You can't make a cheap product and expect it to sell at a really high price. So, when people then get to the manufacturing and they then have to pay for those things, they work out that actually maybe they might not be able to afford that kind of product or the fabric or the trims or something that might make it really expensive. So you end up kind of cutting back on all these different things. You then end up with a cheaper product than you had intended right at the beginning. So the product then doesn't match your market and doesn't match your brand. So then you have to think about a new market because obviously, if you can't afford to change your product, you're going to have to find a new market and therefore market it in a different way. Same brand, but just with a different logo, different font. You have to appeal to that particular market. So that essentially is why I always advise people when they're doing their graphical stuff, so logos, fonts, colors, anything that's graphical to do with your brand, you do that at the end. So that way, if you've paid for a designer to do all that stuff for you, you don't have to get it done twice. If you've sat there researching stuff, 5, 6 days straight and need a cup of coffee or something, you don't have to do it again. You don't waste money getting things printed or made right at the beginning. You always wait until you've at least done your sampling, got your first kind of sample and your costing, and then you can make a decision whether everything is consistent throughout. Because that's the important thing, that's the secret of fashion success. If you want a brand, it must be consistent. So, Tom, I hope that answers your question. If you've got any other comments, please let me know. That would be amazing. If you guys, not Tom, have a comment, then please list me a little comment in our main video. You can't miss it. It's at the top of the playlist and it says 5 Minute Fashion Brand in huge big yellow letters. So please leave a comment there with your questions, and I guess I will see you next week with another answer.